All right, 2019 Ridge at 38 Criterium Senior Men's 4. This is actually the Colorado State Championship race. I believe we have a field of around 55 Cat 4s here. I had to make the choice of either getting one preview lap of the course or getting a good position lining up. I took a preview lap just to finish a warm up a little bit, and I honestly hadn't recon this course on my bike at all. So, had I known how tough it was going to be to move up in this pack, I might have made a different choice, but coulda, shoulda, woulda. Taking it pretty easy on this first lap. My heart rate's, you know, 140, dropping even. These corners were just ridiculously slow all race long. Like, when I previewed the course in a vehicle, I was imagining railing these corners hard enough that people were going to be wiping out, laying it down, trying to go into them too hot. And I mean, nothing could be further from the truth. We went through them like grandmas today. I mean, 18 miles an hour. It's just super frustrating for me, sitting in the pack. I mean, if I wanted to do something about it, I should have been on front, apparently. This is pretty early in my Cat 4 upgrade, so to some degree, I'm still trying to be humble and, you know, let the other guys lead it out and get some experience back here, but really feels like it was a mistake today. So that's corner one. There's a little bit of a bump there, but nothing too bad. Nothing that seemed to cause anybody any trouble. Most of this pavement is actually in really good shape. No complaints about the road surface at all. This is the only little uphill slog. It's really mild. Barely any elevation gain. Got that little elevated crosswalk bump there. Again, like, you never hit it going fast enough for it to be any kind of a real problem. But yeah, coming into these corners is just, I mean, this is the downhill. Being a heavier rider, I'm always going to end up coasting up on people as it is, but I mean, everybody just really heavy braking into these corners. I mean, on the plus side, there were no wrecks, so I mean, there is that. This is Cat 4 racing. It's not that serious. None of us need to be putting ourselves in the ambulance to try to win this. But yeah, coming out of those, going from 18 miles an hour in those corners up to 30 before we're, halfway down this straight stretch. This corner you could take fairly quickly most of the time, but I still was frustrated that I was finding myself having to use the brakes to go through it with other people around. I really found that this stretch and those finishing stretch and then the uphill section were the only feasible places to really move up without causing problems. But now we're putting out enough effort that heart rate's getting up in the 150s where it should be for the race. I mean, with my my heart rate zones, you know, they don't go very high, but um, you'll see in this race, I just took it way too easy. You know, mid 150s is what I should be sitting at for most of the race. And, you know, I mean, if I'm in the 140s, I'm getting some recovery, but there's a good portion of this race where I'm dipping into the 130s, which is just ridiculous. I mean, for on my part, you know, it's no one's fault but my own. I just took the wrong strategy, tailgunning this, trying to let gaps open up for this section so I could just efficiently roll through these corners and not use so much brake. But it just, you know, no matter how slow I went, it was never slow enough to not use brakes. And I really should have just been moving up instead of playing it safe and trying to conserve. I conserved myself right into finishing the back of the pack. So coming around this corner, you know, I usually hit pretty good power, trying to pick it back up. Right there's 900. Dropping down to 580, 408, you know. And I'm not making up positions, so you know everyone's on the same page here. You know, you'd have to put in a pretty solid dig to really move up on these laps. If you know, 500 and 400 watts through there is not enough to gain you any positions. I'm weighing about a 184, 185 for this race, so not a lightweight, but as flat as it is, it's, you know, weight is really not a factor in this race. No excuses at all for that. There was almost no sketchy maneuvers in this race that I saw. You know, everyone here is Cat 4 this race, and bike handling and experience were, you know, evident compared to the 4.5s and, you know, Cat 5 races that I've been doing. Like I said, a lot of brakes there. Jam back up to 500 watts for a second. Come back out here. Back up in the 600, 700, 800, 700, 600, 500. So putting in some good effort. Getting back up to 30 every time on this street. Wishing I could rail that corner a little harder, but coming up on guys that are on the line. Putting a little effort here to try to move up, grab this guy's wheel. Actually warmed up with him today, and we chatted a bit. Moved up a few positions. But still pretty back in the field. I mean, there's only 50-some guys here, and that looks like a good 40 guys in front of me. So pretty early on, we started really taking this uphill easy. It looks like on this lap is where we, yeah. This is the first lap where all of a sudden we're dropping down 20 miles an hour, 19, 18, 17 coming in around that corner. And there's no one off the front, there's no attack. We're just easing up, you know. So it just all comes back together and the entire group, is 6 guys wide. And, I actually kind of wish it wouldn't because it's making these corners that much slower. I don't mind when we have to do big accelerations out of corners when I have room to actually move up, but it just, I don't know. My perception, it just didn't seem like there were good spots to move up through here. I mean, it opened up so much once you got through the corner that everyone could jam on it. And I just wasn't having much luck with coming up with tactics to move up in this race. As I started to see that we were consistently coming back together on the uphill section and taking it really easy, I started getting in a tail gunning mode where I just, knew I could pretty much rely on this coming back together, not putting in a lot of effort, 200 watts uphill, coasting uphill, and like I was saying earlier, just starting to try to just let gaps open up coming into this section just to avoid using brakes and then getting, back on it. Like I can roll through these corners a hell of a lot faster without putting out any energy. But it was so slow that, this was easily the least effort, lowest heart rate, lowest power output race I've done this whole season. Fixed gear, Cat 5, any of them. Like every Cat 5 race I did this year was significantly harder than this race for me. I mean, I also did badly, so, I can't say anything about how hard it was on the front. I'm just saying my personal experience, I took it far too easy on this race. I mean, 145 beats a minute on this stretch, like, I should be 10 beats a minute higher if I was actually working. I mean, the 400, 300 watts through here, it's not a easy effort, but it's so short before we, we're most laps, we're back to coasting by the time we get to the start finish all the way up through this corner before we ever get back on it. I think this might be a preem lap, so we're having a little more speed up the hill this time. But it's still, everybody's still right there. Like I said, I'm putting out minimal effort here, trying to give myself space. I'm just not at all worried about getting popped because I know their group is not going to get through these corners very quickly at all. jammed down a little bit there, trying to move up. I mean, hitting 800 watts in that little short section, back up in 900, 700, 600, 500. You know, back up to 30, moved up a little bit. Getting pushed pretty far into the gutter for no apparent reason. Back up 950, 800, 700, 600. Pretty consistently hitting those efforts lap after lap. I mean, it's not that tough. You know, it looks like big numbers, but it's such a short effort. You know, it's easy for me to recover from these. I think coming off City Park Criterium last week, where we were, you know, doing laps where we averaged 30 miles an hour, is also kind of just made this feel even slower than it actually was. You know, I mean, we're doing 26, 27, but today it just felt like we were crawling. I mean, I'm coasting, heart rate's coming down 150, just trying to pick a line or, you know, open a gap big enough that I can just roll through. And still, even then, on the brakes to not run into somebody. Jamming back up to 400 watts through that whole section. Back onto the main road. 600 watts, 500, just to sit on wheels. Since it just never seemed to make any progress. You know, I mean, that's where I was in my head, was I can put in effort and I can move up through here, but I know I'm going to go around the corner one and start up the hill, and everybody I just came around is just going to roll back up on me as we're doing 200 watts up the hill, just crawling. So, you know, to me, it just, you either had to be on the very front driving the pace, which didn't seem like was happening. You know, I'm not sure why. I mean, maybe it was a lot harder out front than I'm giving it credit for, but I just couldn't wrap my head around why we were taking it so easy that the front of the pack was right there, you know, backing it off that hard on this hill, and nobody was going off the front. I mean, I'm not a breakaway rider per se. I have, you know, really crap for base. So if I get off the front in the wind on my own, it's not going to go well. But that certainly isn't the case for many of the riders here today. So I don't know why no one felt that they could attack on that hill, recover coming down this hill, rail it into these corners by themselves, taking their own line. I mean, you could take these corners 5 miles an hour faster than the group is if you are off on your own. I mean, it would seems like an ideal setup for a breakaway in my mind, but you know, what do I know? Barely a Cat 4 racer. So we're moving back up to 30. I'm trying not to put in very much effort to do so because it's just wasted effort, as we're just going to keep bunching back up. This rider, I'm not sure if it's this lap. I know at one point comes around me in a corner like that, and then opens up a gap and damn near gets us dropped. Yeah, that's right here. Pisses me off, but you know, I'm sure he didn't do it on purpose. Not like he was maliciously trying to pop us off the back, but it it was frustrating that he came around me only to let a gap open up. Even though we're all just gonna regroup, I was, in panic mode for a second that I was about to get popped, but yet again we're just crawling up this hill like we're on a fucking group ride. I I never knew until today how frustrating it would be to be in a race where we were just taking it easy. I mean, hindsight's 2020. I wish I would have made my way up to the front one way or another. Put in the effort so that I could be part of the driving pace on this, because it would have been more gratifying to blow up trying to set a high tempo than it was today to ride a fast training ride and finish toward the back of the pack. Yep, every lap 31 miles an hour on that stretch, through the corner, back on the power, 900 watts, 6, 5, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm putting in a little more effort here, trying to move up again. Super frustrating because I know in my head that was a wasted effort. I picked up some positions, and if it's anything like the previous laps, those positions are all going to come back. We're going to be 7 wide again, and it's just pointless unless you're going to go around the entire pack and get in the top 5 guys. It's pointless. Really letting the gap open up this time. I'm not tired at all. I'm just frustrated and trying to go as slow as I have to not use my brakes, and just cannot do it. There is no effort small enough to be able to coast through these corners without using brakes. I mean, recorded speed's 23 miles an hour. I tell you, it felt like 17. I know I'm, pissing and moaning this whole video, but I'm not bitching about anyone else. I'm just frustrated with my choices in the race. I just tactically was all wrong on this. Too conservative, too worried that it was going to pick up at some point, and I was going to need all the reserves that I could save up at this, by taking it easy through here. And it just just never happened. Even doing what I'm doing through this section of the race, could have been fine. Like I said, I mean, it's, you can see as clearly as I can, how much of a, how much effort you could waste to lap after lap, move up half the pack and then have it come back together on the hill and lose all that position gaining that you just did. But, so taking it easy, tail gunning, saving up through this part of the race would have been fine had I started to get more aggressive a lot earlier. I mean, honestly, we're 26 minutes in, 26 and a half. This is when I probably, and hindsight, should have started getting on it. I should have been trying to consistently move up through the field, been more aggressive when we get to the hill, and try not to let any of those positions come back, just force my way up through the pack if I could. I mean, who's to say whether that would have worked either, but it seems like it would have been a better plan than this. I mean, barely cracking 150 watts on the fastest part of the course that lap. This is pretty easy going. I mean, City Park last week, for sure, faster, more effort needed. Even though we took it pretty easy on the backside on that race, it still was significantly harder for me than this race was. Go back to the Fed Center crit. I finished 20th in that, and that was a 4.5. That was infinitely harder than this race. I mean, that did have a bit more of a hill. Perhaps that's where my perception of effort was coming from on that race. I don't go up hills well. But I mean, if you aren't right on the front, if you've got a couple of wheels to draft on the front of this, it, I mean, it has to be just as easy sitting fifth wheel as it is sitting back here. Because, rubber band, we're putting in more work back here. I'm betting the front 10 guys aren't putting in 800 watt efforts around, coming out of these corners to maintain their position. We're just, stretched out the entire length of this stretch and then bringing it back together over and over. Hitting 32, but coasting the rest of the way up the straight stretch. In this corner, I would not, be keen on trying to take it 35. That'd be fast enough to make that corner a little sketchy. Yeah, 143 heart rate going up the hill. I mean, this is recovery effort for me. This is noodling along, soft pedaling, so that I can roll through these corners and just stay attached to the back of the pack. I mean, I guess, you know, I was just still thinking that it was going to accelerate at some point here. You know, some point sooner than one to go. So I'm trying to just be ready when the pack starts to split, you know, to hopefully be able to make the split and drop half of this pack, but it just never happened. The 1,000 watts right there, a little over. I think that was that might have been the hardest 5-second dig I did the whole race. I didn't even bother cracking 1,000 for the finishing lap. Five or 600 watts. But a little bit of an acceleration here. Oh yeah. Our rate's still 146. Just pretty easy effort. I did not do the Lookout Mountain hill climb yesterday, and that might also be a factor. A good number of these guys are probably feeling a little bit of fatigue from having done that. I mean, it's only a 20-minute effort for most of these guys, but it's 20 minutes all out, and that takes a toll on the legs. Yeah, jumped up to 1,000 again there, 900. I think I scared myself a little bit that I almost let too big a gap open, so I jammed on it for a second. But, you know, with a 142 heart rate, I could afford to put a little tiny effort in. Took the corner really wide on that lap. I can't remember exactly what was going on my inside that I needed to take it that wide, but there, like I said, there was nothing sketchy in my experience on this race. It was very tame. It's pretty consistent in the back here. I mean, you know, a lot of these guys are the same guys. You know, we're just doing the same thing, sitting in the back, tail gunning, trying to ride smart. I don't imagine anyone out here today was just trying to hang on. You know, I couldn't see anybody who was suffering here. Few laps this section did feel, you know, I did have to put in a good effort. Started to feel like work on a few laps, but I mean, it's just short lived. Nothing all that demanding, really. Hard for a second. Moving up. We only got 4 minutes to go. I think this is maybe the 2 to go lap. So I'm trying to be a little more aggressive, but too little, too late. Got a lot of guys to go around and just not a lot of room to do it. Heart rate's coming up to actual racing heart rate. Probably going to stay there for the rest of the 3 minutes that we have left, and it just too late. I mean, there's just, it looks pretty wide open there, but in reality, you know, you can only be so aggressive through there. People aren't going to be ready for you to jam inside. So back up over 1,000, 900, 700, 6. Again, having to reel them back in a little bit. A little bit of a gap opened up there. 2 minutes to go. It's got to be bell lap, right? Getting 800 watts. Probably the almost certainly the hardest. I went into this hill all day, but still having to back it off. Damn near coasting again because no one else is. I mean, there's plenty in front of me that aren't putting in that much of an effort. Came around a good number of guys right there. But really should have been being more aggressive. I should have jammed my way up through those next 10 riders. I felt like I was also just being way too courteous in hindsight. It's just like we're all being very polite through the corners, and it's just, you know, I mean, it's nice to not be sketchy, but, you know, final lap in a 40-minute crit is no place to be polite. I've got miles to make up to get anywhere. I start putting down the power, 900 watts through here, 800, 700. And I'm actually starting to question that I'm like got the right lap again, because these guys they're not sprinting, they're not even putting in much effort, and I backed it off. I'm coasting through the finish line.